Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the Voice of Reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Specifically, we have pulled up the area of operations directly inside of Bakhmut. Obviously, Bakhmut is where some of the most heaviest fighting is going on, especially in terms of direct infantry on infantry engagements taking place in the urbanized areas in and around Bakhmut. And again, as you can see here, we have the map pulled up. You can see the disposition of Ukrainian forces. So essentially, inside the city of Bakhmut, the eastern half of the city has been taken by Russian forces. And on the central and western parts of the city, you essentially have 1, 2, 3, 4 brigades, 4 Ukrainian brigades, and a regiment that is operating in the city. So in theory, you're looking at between 2, 4, 6, 8, probably up to 10,000 Ukrainian troops still in Bakhmut. And those are being supported by additional brigades to the west. You have the 77th Air Mobile Brigade. This is considered more or less an elite unit by the Ukrainians. The 67th Mechanized Brigade. Further to the north, you have the 56th Motorized Infantry Brigade. And down to the southwest, you have the 127th Brigade of Territorial Forces. And these units here, this is the 241st Territorial Brigade, the 93rd Mechanized Brigade. That's the principal defensive unit in Bakhmut. Then supporting that is elements or the entire 3rd Operational Brigade of the National Guard and the 1st Operational Brigade presidential unit of the National Guard. And then you have a independent regiment down here as well. But it looks like the Russians are attempting to, they're conducting a double envelopment operation, attempting to move from the south to the north and the north to the south, squeezing Ukrainian forces in this direction. Furthermore, we have movements of Russian forces further to the north. And then obviously the Russians continue operations, predominantly heavy artillery operations in the east directed towards Ukrainian forces in the city. Now, recently, within quite literally the last few hours, we have heard reports that seem rather credible that the Ukrainians have for the first time deployed the U.S. Joint Direct Attack munition against targets in areas controlled by Russia. It appears that the Ukrainians tossed a JDAM ER, probably either a 500-pound or a 2,000-pound JDAM at a Russian target. And it appeared to have hit a target on the ground, detonated, and that's kind of what you can see. And you can it definitely appears to be some sort of air-dropped large bomb type of ordnance. We believe that the Ukrainians, in all probability, have retrofitted a MiG-29, either one of their own MiG-29s or a Polish MiG-29, that has the ability to drop one of these JDAMs. Now, when I say drop a JDAM, that does not mean that this MiG-29, this Ukrainian MiG-29, was flying over Bakhmut. In all probability, it tossed the JDAM about 70 kilometers outside, west of Bakhmut, and then that JDAM then activated its glide system and then proceeded to its target someplace in this target vicinity. But that would be the first reported use of a JDAM by Ukrainian forces against Russian forces. So very interesting as this war continues to escalate. Now, we've also received additional news that the United States may be also looking to retrofit Su-27s or MiG-29s with the American AMRAAM, a very advanced radar-guided long-range air-to-air missile on a Ukrainian aircraft. So again, we don't know how many aircraft, MiG-29s, Su-27s, the Ukrainian military has still flying. It's difficult to say. It's difficult to say how many pilots the Ukrainians are still have available. We do know the Ukrainian Air Force has been greatly degraded over the course of the last year. And in all probability, they're flying from roads via hidden air bases. All air bases, to my knowledge, have been hit inside of Ukraine by Russian aircraft or cruise missiles. So again, for the Ukrainians to continue to operate its very small air force against Russian forces is somewhat of a mystery on how exactly they are doing that. But nonetheless, they're still flying. Now, at the same time, we still get reports of Ukrainian aircraft getting shot down, especially if they get close to the eastern portions of the combat zone. Most recently, it was reported that a Ukrainian aircraft was shot down very close to Bakhmut. So again, these JDAMs give the Ukrainians the ability not to get close to Bakhmut, or at least 70 kilometers, 40 kilometers from Russian forces. And in all probability, they're flying very low to avoid Russian S-400s, S-300s, and Russian aircraft. And that also puts them out of the envelope of Russian medium-range surface-to-air missiles as well. So that's how the Ukrainians are probably conducting these strike missions against Russian targets. Again, the JDAM, which does appear to be being used at this moment, will give them that enhanced and increased capability. Now we can anticipate that the Russians, in all probability, will strike back against wherever the Ukrainians are launching those JDAM strikes. I would imagine that the JDAMs are being shipped over on a as-needed basis. I don't believe the Ukrainians are storing large amounts of JDAMs in western Ukraine, because the minute the Russians get wind of where these JDAMs are, a Kh-47 hypersonic missile is probably going to be on that location in a very short period of time. So I believe that, in all probability, these JDAMs are sitting just across the border in Poland, and as they need them, they ship them across the border, load them on an aircraft probably close to the Polish-Ukrainian border, and then that's how the Ukrainians are conducting these operations against Russian forces. Now again, that risks escalation. At what point do the Russians say, well, enough is enough? Poland, you are now an active participant in this conflict, and those storage locales very close to the border will be targeted by our missile strikes. Then what happens? Now, will the Russians do that? Difficult to say. But if Poland continues to participate actively against Russian forces by having these safe areas where the Ukrainians can train and store weapons and then move weapons across the border, because that's what's happening, then in all probability you cannot rule out the possibility that the Russians would hit some of those locales. Makes total sense. But this is kind of again, the overview of the battle that is taking place near Bakhmut. Obviously, the Ukrainians still have a significant amount of forces in this area, continuing to try to defend. At the same time, it's difficult for the Ukrainians to move these elements of 4 brigades out of Bakhmut west, because again, this area is under almost perpetual indirect artillery and long-range rocket fire. And then also the Russians have the ability to attack these areas with ground attack assets such as attack helicopters and multi-role aircraft as well. So that is where we set for today. We are going to continue to monitor report. Thank you for joining us. More to come in the very near future. Have a good day.